Welcome to Inside the Academy. This is a systemic breakdown of pathophysiology designed to give practitioners the clinical edge that they so need to solve complex cases. I am Srishti Pohekar, a faculty at iThrive Academy, and today we are diving deeper into something that most practitioners completely miss, even though it's right at the root of every chronic condition that you'll ever treat. Let's start with a scenario that you all have probably seen. Your client comes to you exhausted, gaining weight, brain fogged, and borderline diabetic. You run their blood work, everything just looks normal. So you do what you're trained to do. Calorie deficit, more exercise, maybe some extra B12. 3 months later, they're worse. Here's what nobody taught you in your certification. You are treating the smoke, not the fire. The fire is something that's happening inside 37 trillion cells in tiny organelles that act as the fundamental operating system of your body, or as popularly known, the powerhouses of the cell, the mitochondria. And if you don't understand mitochondrial pathophysiology, you will never really solve any of these chronic diseases. You'll just manage it like everybody else. So here's the truth. Almost every chronic condition, from fatigue to brain fog to heart diseases to cancer, can be traced back to the failure in mitochondrial health. For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you the pathophysiology map that separates functional nutritionists who get referrals from those who don't. So let's go. Before we go deeper into the science, I want you to see the full scope of what we are going to talk about. Here at iThrive, we have identified 10 clusters of diseases, from metabolic disorders to neurodegenerative disorders to cancer. You're likely being told that these are all separate issues, but let me tell you, they're not. They're all energy failures, lack of harmony. And by the end of this module, you'll see exactly how. Okay, quick check-in. When I say mitochondria, what pops in your head? If it's the powerhouse of the cell, you're not wrong, you're just 20 years behind the science. Here's what we know now. Mitochondria aren't just making energy. They are decision makers. They decide whether a cell lives or dies. They control inflammation, they regulate hormones, they even talk to your genes. Mitochondria act as the fundamental operating system, OS as you might, of the body. And just like the OS, when it crashes, everything crashes. So let's build the foundation. Picture this. Each mitochondria has two membranes. The inner membrane is where the magic happens. It's folded into these structures called as cristae, and that's where we find the electron transport chain, or the ETC. Now the ETC has 5 protein complexes, labeled complex 1 through 5. Think of them as these workers on the assembly line, if you might. Now here's the process. Nutrients come in, glucose from carbs, fatty acids from fats, amino acids from protein. They all get broken down into something called as NADH and FADH2. These are the electron carriers. Now these electrons, they enter ETC at complex 1 for NADH and complex 2 for FADH2. As electrons move down from the chain, complex 1 to 3 to 4, protons get pumped across the inner membrane. This creates a gradient, like water building up in a dam. That pressure drives complex 5, ATP synthase, which cranks out ATP, the actual energy currency that your body is going to utilize. One glucose molecule, 30 to 32 ATP, that's efficiency. But here's the catch. This process isn't clean. Electrons sometimes leak out from the chain, usually at complex 1 and complex 3. When they do, they react with oxygen and form something called as reactive oxygen species, or ROS, or free radicals. Now, ROS gets a bad rep, but in small amounts, it's actually signaling. It tells your cells that, hey, we need more mitochondria or more antioxidants. But when the ETC is damaged, when complex 1 is sluggish because your client is deficient in B complex, or complex 3 is overwhelmed because they are eating processed junk, ROS production goes haywire. And that's when the dysfunction cascade begins. Here's what blew my mind when I first learned this. Everyone talks about antioxidants like they are the heroes, but ROS, free radicals, aren't the villain. In the right amounts, they're actually essential. They trigger your cells to adapt, to build resilience. The problem is not ROS. The problem is chronic excessive ROS because your mitochondria are broken. So when your clients come in chugging antioxidant smoothies, but they still feel like garbage, that's because you're mopping up the flood without fixing the leak. That's the difference between functional nutrition and wishful thinking. Now you understand the assembly line? Now let's talk about what happens when it breaks and how that breakdown shows up as 10 different clusters of diseases. Mitochondrial dysfunction does not show up as one disease. It shows up as every single disease. Why? Because every cell needs energy, and when energy production is failing, the weakest link in your client's body breaks first. Let me walk you through the 10 clusters and show you how they are all connected, okay? Let's start with cluster 1, metabolic diseases. Type 2 diabetes that we just learned about in the previous video. As you know, it's not just about sugar. When your mitochondria are overloaded, maybe your client is eating too much processed food. Maybe they are not exercising or they are chronically stressed. They cannot burn the fat or the sugar efficiently. The cell starts to get filled with toxic fat. These clog up the insulin signaling pathway. The result is insulin resistance. But here's the key insight. Insulin resistance is not a disease. It's a protective mechanism. The cell is saying, I cannot handle any more energy. Stop sending it to me. This is why calorie restriction alone does not work. You're not fixing the mitochondria, you're just starving a broken engine. Obesity, same story. Your client is not storing fat because they are lazy, they're storing it because their mitochondria are failing to burn it. Fatty liver disease, that's fat accumulating in the liver because the mitochondria are too damaged to oxidize it. One root cause, mitochondrial overload and dysfunction. Cluster 2, neurological and neurodegenerative disorders. Your brain is only 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your energy. It is the first organ to suffer when mitochondrial power drops. Let's talk about Alzheimer's. It's now being called type 3 diabetes, and here's why. Alzheimer's is fundamentally insulin resistance and energy failure in the brain. The brain cells cannot take up the glucose efficiently, so they starve. When neurons don't have energy, they die. The amyloid plaque that you see in Alzheimer's, those are the byproducts of mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress, not the main root cause. Parkinson's, that's linked to the damage in substantia nigra, an area of the brain that's highly susceptible to mitochondrial collapse because it's packed with dopamine-producing neurons that need a massive amount of ATP. Even ADHD and brain fog are the signs that the brain cells are running low on battery. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for focus, executive function, needs a huge amount of energy. When mitochondria fail, focus collapses. Depression? Same. Serotonin production requires ATP. Your client's brain cannot make energy, it cannot make neurotransmitters. Most neurologists wait until someone's already forgetting names, already confused before they even consider treatment. But you can identify the mitochondrial dysfunction decades earlier by looking at brain fog in even 30-year-olds. Anxiety and depression that don't respond to SSRIs. ADHD symptoms that worsen with age. These are the early warning signs of mitochondrial stress in the brain. And if you intervene now with the right nutrients, lifestyle shifts, you might just prevent what becomes Alzheimer's at 30. This is the clinical edge we teach at iThrive Academy. Cluster 3. Cardiovascular diseases. The heart never rests. It beats about 1 lakh times a day. It requires massive amounts of ATP. Heart failure is essentially energy starvation of the cardiac muscle. When mitochondria in the heart cells cannot produce enough ATP, the heart cannot pump efficiently. Hypertension, often the result of blood vessels stiffening because they lack the energy to produce nitric oxide, the molecule that tells the vessels to relax. No ATP, no relaxation. Vessels stay constricted, blood pressure rises. This is why CoQ10 is so critical for heart health. It's the cofactor for 3 complexes in the ETC. Without it, cardiac mitochondria cannot really make energy. And yet, how many cardiologists test CoQ10 levels? Almost none. But you will. Cluster 4, cancer. This is a big one. For decades, we thought that cancer was purely genetic. But now we know that cancer is a metabolic disease. This is the Warburg effect. Cancer cells have broken mitochondria. They cannot really burn oxygen very efficiently through the ETC, so they revert to a primitive form of energy production, fermentation using sugar. This is why cancer cells are so dependent on the glucose. They are stuck in survival mode because their power plant is actually broken. Now, I'm not saying that mitochondrial dysfunction is the only factor in cancer. Genetics, toxins, chronic inflammation, they all play a role. But here's what we know. Healthy mitochondria are one of your best defense against cancer. Why? Because functional mitochondria can trigger apoptosis, programmed cell death. If a cell becomes damaged or mutated, healthy mitochondria say, time to die. But broken mitochondria, they lose their ability to make decisions. The cell becomes immortal, it keeps living. That's cancer. Cluster 5. Autoimmune disorders and chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia are not in your head. They're a state where the body is stuck in what we call the cell danger response. When the mitochondria sense a threat, infection, toxin, chronic stress, they shut down the normal energy production to fight it. But sometimes they get stuck in that state forever. When the threat is gone, the mitochondria never get a signal to reboot. The result, your client feels exhausted no matter how much they rest. Multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, these are also related to mitochondrial dysfunction. Why? Because the mitochondria regulate your immune system. When they dysfunction, the immune system loses its brakes. It starts attacking the body's own tissues. That is why conventional immunosuppressants only manage the autoimmune disease, they don't really fix the root cause. The mitochondrial failure in driving the immune dysregulation. Cluster 6. Reproductive issues. A human egg has more mitochondria than almost any other cell. Hundreds and thousands of them. Why? Because it takes massive energy to create life. Infertility is often nature's way of saying that you do not have the energy reserve to fund a pregnancy. PCOS, we covered this earlier. It's fundamentally the mitochondrial insulin resistance in the ovaries. Erectile dysfunction in men, same story. The smooth muscle cells in the blood vessel need ATP to produce nitric oxide for vasodilation. No ATP, no erection. Reproductive energy is expensive. If the mitochondria are broken, the body is going to shut down. Your PCOS patient comes to you. She's been trying to conceive for 2 years. She's on metformin, she's doing keto, she's working out, and nothing is working out. Here's what's actually happening. Her ovarian cells are insulin resistant because the mitochondria are broken. They cannot process energy efficiently. The body reads this as we don't have energy reserve to support a pregnancy. So ovulation completely shuts down. You can cut the carbs all you want, but if you don't fix her mitochondria, if you don't restore her cellular energy production, she is not going to ovulate. This is what we teach at iThrive Academy. Root cause pathophysiology, not just symptom management. Cluster 7. Sleep disorders. Here's something counterintuitive. You need energy to sleep. Your brain needs ATP to run the cleaning cycles, the glymphatic system that happens at night. This is when your brain clears the metabolic waste, including the beta amyloid, the Alzheimer's protein. If your mitochondria are weak, you get tired but wired insomnia. Your body is exhausted, but your brain doesn't have the energy to initiate sleep. This is why magnesium helps to sleep. It's a cofactor for ATP synthase. You literally give the brain the fuel that it needs to rest. Cluster 8. Aging. Aging is the simple, slow loss of mitochondrial function. Sarcopenia, muscle loss. It occurs when we lose the density of mitochondria in our muscle tissue. Muscle cells are packed with mitochondria because muscle contraction requires a huge amount of energy. Lose mitochondria, lose muscles. Vision or hearing loss, same. Cells in your retina and inner ear are metabolically active. When their mitochondria fail, these senses start to decline. This is why exercise is so powerful for longevity. It triggers the mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria. You're not just staying fit, you're literally building new power plants for the cells of your body. Cluster 9. Gastrointestinal disorders. Your gut lining replaces itself every few days. This requires obviously a huge amount of energy. When mitochondrial function drops, the gut barrier fails. This leads to leaky gut. Undigested food particles, toxins, they start crossing into the bloodstream. The immune system reacts, inflammation spikes, and that inflammation, that is further damaging to the mitochondria. It's a vicious cycle. This is why IBS and IBD are so hard to treat with the diet alone. Yes, food matters, of course, but if you don't restore the mitochondrial function in the gut lining, the barrier will keep breaking down. Cluster 10. allergies and histamine intolerances. Mitochondria regulate your immune system, especially mast cells which release histamine. When mitochondrial dysfunction happens, the immune system loses its brakes. It overreacts to everything: pollen, food, dust. This leads to histamine intolerances and mast cell activation syndrome, or MCAS. Your client with mystery allergies, the one who reacts to everything that they eat, it's not that they're allergic to 50 different things, it's their mitochondria which are broken and their immune system is stuck in overdrive. Okay, let's pause. 10 clusters, all different presentations, one root cause. This is the hidden epidemic behind every chronic diseases that we treat. And that is why iThrive is the only ecosystem that understands energy at a cellular level. Now, how do you actually diagnose this? Here's the frustrating truth. Standard blood work will miss the mitochondrial dysfunction. Your standard CBCs, LFTs, KFTs, lipid panel, these tests weren't diagnosed to measure cellular energy production. They're designed to catch acute diseases, not subclinical dysfunction. So, what should you be looking at? Test number 1. Organic acids test, or OAT. This is your gold standard for mitochondrial function. It measures metabolic byproducts in the urine test that tell you, is the Krebs cycles working perfectly? Are they making energy aerobically or anaerobically? Are they oxidizing fats properly? And OAT gives you answers to all of this, a functional snapshot of what's going inside the mitochondria, and no other test can do this. Test number 2. CoQ10 levels. CoQ10 is a cofactor for 3 different ETC complexes. If that's low, your client's ETC is crawling. But here's the catch. Most labs don't test this unless you specifically order it. And most clients over 40, they are deficient, either from aging, statin use, or poor diet. Test number 3, carnitine levels. Carnitine shuttles long-chain fatty acids into the mitochondria for beta oxidation. Without it, your clients cannot burn fat for fuel. Clinically, low carnitine shows up at stubborn weight gain despite low-calorie diet, muscle weakness, fatigue after meals, etc. Test number 4, B vitamin status, B2, B3, B5. These are the cofactors for the ETC. Standard B12 or folate test, they are not enough. You need a functional B vitamin panel, or even better, look at their OAT for markers like the methylmalonic acid for B12 function. Test number 5. Genetic SNPs. Now, genetics isn't destiny, but certain SNPs increase the mitochondrial vulnerability. MTHFR. It impairs methylation, meaning that it's going to affect the mitochondrial antioxidant production of glutathione. SOD2. This gene codes for superoxide dismutase, your mitochondria's primary antioxidant defense. If it's polymorphic, they are more susceptible to oxidative damage. Do you need these genetic tests? Not really. But if it helps you understand why some clients are more fragile, then you must get it done. If you walked into this video thinking that mitochondria were just the powerhouse of the cell, you now know that they are fundamental operating system of the body. You now understand how the ETC produces energy and how it breaks, how dysfunction cascades into 10 different clusters of disease, all stemming from one same root cause, how to diagnose what conventional labs miss, and how to approach a multi-cluster patient with confidence. But here is what I really want you to sit with. Mitochondrial dysfunction is the hidden epidemic behind every chronic disease that we treat. And most practitioners will never learn this. They'll be stuck in symptom management. They'll wonder why their clients plateau. But you're building something different. You're building clinical depth. You're learning to think like a practitioner who gets referrals, who charge premium rates, who actually reverse disease instead of just managing it. And that's what we do at iThrive Academy. We are the only ecosystem that truly understands energy at a cellular level. From clinical services at iLife to education at the Academy and the supplements at Essentials, formulated with mitochondrial function in the mind. If you want more of this, if you want to become a practitioner everyone else refers to, our iCFN certification goes 100 times deeper than this single module. We'll teach you the pathophysiology, the diagnosis, the protocols, and how to build a thriving practice around root cause medicine. Link in the description. Let's build something extraordinary together. See you in the next one.